Hello everyone. My name is Hassan Ali and I'm joined by Sharon Kumar and Rupesh Atmuri. Welcome to Cricktake. Today's episode isn't about celebrating women's cricket. It's about questioning why it's still catching up to a game it helped build. The first Women's World Cup was played in 1973, 2 years before the men's inaugural ICC tournament. How many of you knew that? Most fans don't. Why? Because it doesn't fit the mythology. For over a century, cricket has been positioned as a symbol of British masculinity, social order, and imperial ideology, an institution designed by and for men. This idea was first powerfully explored by C.L.R. James in Beyond a Boundary in 1963, and later expanded by Mike Marquesi in Anyone But England in 1994. Both these writers, in separate times, showed that cricket isn't just a sport. It's a carrier of class, race, and colonial control. Today, we're told the game is growing. But growth doesn't mean equity. Visibility doesn't mean value. And putting women on the pitch doesn't mean putting them in power. Modern research, too, in 2024, shows this. Fletcher, Caldwell, and Wheaton, writing in the Sociology of Sport journal, said that cricket as a cultural product has historically been organized along gendered, classed, and racialized lines, with men holding the majority of power and visibility within the sport. So when women did do something historic, like hosting the very first World Cup, the system simply didn't know how to remember it. The injuries are real, the contracts are short, the stats are missing, and behind every packed stadium is a quieter question. Who owns the game? And who's still being invited in as a guest? Welcome to the throwback segment. Sharon, let's rewind a little. Because to understand where women's cricket is today, you have to understand what's been forgotten. We talk a lot about growth, about progress, but the past is where a lot of the questions lie. Sharon, did you know that the first ever ICC World Cup for any gender was actually the Women's Cricket World Cup? Not 1975 with Clive Lloyd and the West Indies. It was 1973, 2 years earlier, organized by Rachael Flint, played in England, and won by the women's team.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Me considering myself as a cricket fan, following cricket so closely, even I'd never thought about something like this. And it's the same story with most of the listeners today. You made an interesting point here. It speaks volume about how history is curated in cricket. Let's pause it here and think, why is that we didn't remember that Women's World Cup? Because it didn't matter, or because we told it didn't?
That's exactly the issue, Sharon. It's not that it didn't happen. It's just that the pinnacle of the 1973 Women's World Cup didn't fit the story cricket wanted to tell about itself. Cricket has always been built around a certain mythology, right? Masculinity, tradition, empire. So when women hosted the first World Cup, it wasn't erased violently, it was just ignored rather gently. And this is where something called gender-bland sexism comes in. And unfortunately, it still shapes the way cricket is covered today. Here's how it works. When a male cricketer hits 100, the commentary is supercharged. He's unstoppable, a masterclass, heroic stuff. But when a woman does the same, the praise is polite, composed, disciplined, a steady knock. Same achievement, less energy. That's gender-bland sexism. The idea that women's accomplishments are covered in bland, uninspired language that makes them seem less impressive. And it's not openly sexist. It's what researchers have called stealth sexism. It sounds fair on the surface, but underneath, it reinforces the idea that men's cricket is the real deal. And women's cricket is just admirable, I think, nice, good to watch, great fun. And over time, this has created a hierarchy. It contributes to invisibility. Not because women aren't playing, but because how they're talked about makes their impact feel smaller. In a 2024 study done at Bournemouth University, UK, researcher Keith Perry and his colleagues said women's cricket is still presented through a lens of grateful participation. It's not framed as ownership, it's framed as opportunity. So when women do in fact do something massive, like hosting the first ever World Cup in 1973, 2 years before the men, that memory never becomes a part of cricket's mainstream legacy. It gets tucked away as trivia, a warm fact, nothing disruptive. And that's the power of gender bland sexism. It doesn't block you from playing. It just makes sure the story doesn't stick. Just like the fact that the first ever World Cup was in 1973 and it was the women's edition does not stick in your memory or most of our listeners' memory.
So do you think these all the tournaments, the T20 World Cups or the any major T20 leagues which is happening around the world is just a part of inclusivity?
I think so.
How come?
What is cricket known as? It's known as the gentleman's game.
That is how it is shown.
And that's the point I'm making, that this gender bland sexism reinforces this stereotype that this is the men's game and women are just here to participate. I'll give you another example. You know, I think our listeners will start to know a little bit that I love looking into the world of academia. Let me tell you something shocking. In a study conducted in 2018 in Australia, there were only 9 academic studies published on women's cricket. 9.
What is the ratio when you compare it with men?
Men have at least 3 to 4,000 times more.
4,000 folds?
Yes. 4,000 times more published readings and research compared to women's cricket. And here's the thing. Here's another shocking thing. All the 9 academic studies that have been published on women's cricket up until 2018 were all on elite Australian fast bowlers. No batting, no spin, no fielding, no mental skills or the mental side of the game. Just a pure focus on 9 fast bowlers that have graced the Australian jersey, female fast bowlers. And this just shows you that the gendered divide in cricket is not only ideological, but it's also academic.
Okay, Hassan, can you just debrief what a sports academia means? Like, what are the contents it has, and what are the outcomes it will be on the international cricket circuit?
Sharon, sports academia basically looks at how things such as gender, race, and power shape the way the sport is played, run,
Mm-hmm.
as well as remembered, beyond just what happens on the field. And what it does for the long term is that it allows us to assess as well as recognize what shortfalls are there in our sport. And once you recognize them or identify them, you can start addressing them. Academia, for example, in the world of women's cricket, has identified that there is not only an ideological divide between men and women's cricket, but there's also an academic. We also know very well and very clearly, and there's been a lot of debate around this, that there's also a financial divide. But that financial divide between men and women's cricket is not only limited to cricket, it's also extending to other sports across the world, such as football and basketball and tennis. I think Olympics might be the only one where they're paid the equal amount. So academia has identified a shortfall that cricket has. But what are we doing to fix it? What are we doing to fix something that has been part of our system for decades? Women have been sidelined from cricket, not just in recent times, but since they hosted the first World Cup in 1973.
So, Hassan, when you factor in ideological and academic exclusion, is it not just about who's playing? Is it? It's about who owns the narrative. who gets remembered, who gets marketed, and who try to stay amar. And that's why, even as a women cricket grows, it still feels like an add-on, not a pillar. I want to give one example about the WPL. Even with lots of Ambani's money, the franchises like Royal Challengers Bangalore or the underdogs like Delhi Capitals, the money behind these, all the franchises can set a standard of vibe which can only say, look how far we have come, instead of saying, this is a standard now. So Hassan, this is what you meant when you mentioned about Keith Perry's research and the statement which she has given about women's cricket. She greatly advocated saying women's are a grateful participant, allowed to be a good participant rather than carrying the sports.
And that framing, Sharon, the grateful participants, it sounds harmless, but it's quite brutal because it keeps women's cricket in a perpetual state of an origin story. Like it's always in its nascent slash early stages, no matter how far it's come. When will women's cricket actually arrive and we can say, yes, women's cricket is here and it's standing on its own. It doesn't need men's cricket. You're absolutely right. What you've said about women not being allowed to own the game is perfectly proven by one of the legends of the women's game, Julan Goswami. She said that even after a 2-decade career, being one of the fastest female fast bowlers in the world, she still felt the need to prove herself every single time she stepped onto the field. Not just to the selectors or fans, but to the system that still sees women's cricket as a question mark, not as a given. And that's what we're dealing with. Not just historical erasure, but a present that still makes women carry the burden of legacy. And I think this is a great segue to move on to the present. Where do things really stand today? The WPL is here, the Women's Big Bash is here, the Women's 100 is here, the ICC broadcasts are improving, the money is improving. But is the system finally sharing power or just giving visibility without voice? Let's move to our next segment, In the Middle. In the middle. Now that we've unpacked the past, Sharon, let's talk about the present. Because on paper, things look better. The Women's Premier League is the second highest paid women's league in the world. We've got packed stadiums, viral clips, new role models too. But here's my question. Does this visibility guarantee equity? And does all this hype equal to power? Because behind the headlines, there are still gaps in contracts, commentary, leadership, and even basic infrastructure. Most of all, do we take the game seriously enough when the cameras are off and the televisions are off? Is the women's cricket infrastructure a priority? And what this segment, Sharon, is really going to be about is what it means to be a professional woman cricketer in 2025. Not just playing the game, but also navigating the power structures that seem to feel one step behind.
To answer your question, Hassan, I think I need to take you back to my memories. That was my first interaction meeting a women cricketer. It was December 2024. I was traveling from Hyderabad to Indore. I was sitting at the departures gate. I was sipping my coffee, looking here and there. What caught my attention was something which was a dream for every Indian kid. It was BCCI's kit. I saw a navy blue Adidas Indian kit with a BCCI logo on it. As soon as I saw it, I knew it was not a duplicate one. This is something which is original. When I just followed the bag, I saw a girl who was in her Indian jerseys. She was looking tired. Then I couldn't realize who was it. So I went back to my phone. I was just checking. Then I saw a couple of reels. Then I saw this is the same lady who is sitting right in front of me, who's in a reel. So basically, she was Ayushi Shukla, who was flying back from Kuala Lumpur, separated from her team. She is going back to Indore to meet her family right after winning inaugural edition of Women's Under 19 Asia Cup. That was not the story which I am trying to say. Right after that, I wanted to meet her. I wanted to speak about the cricket. But what really stopped me was a conversation between a women and Ayushi Shukla, which they were standing right at the departure gate. The women in her maybe 50s or 60s looks like my school teacher or my auntie next door. The conversation was a bit typical, but it was deep. When auntie went on to ask her, how do you manage studies alongside cricket? Ayushi was answering pretty boldly about her passion and her academics.
One thing I want to bring to the attention of our listeners is that many female cricketers around the world balance either a full-time job or motherhood along with cricket.
So, the next question the 50-year-old lady asked Ayushi caught my all attention and caught me off guard. She asked whether the sports is safe for women and how is women's cricket treating you.
Wow.
I'm not really sure how did she answer, but I could only see her facial expression. She was explaining it pretty well. That day I understood the old lady was not just questioning or acquiring something. She was very curious how women cricket as a profession unfolding in my country.
Because of the unfamiliarity.
Yeah. That day I could see two Indian women, one who could barely dream about this and one who is successfully living in it. Right after that, when we landed in Indore, when I came out, I was waiting for my cab. I saw a huge bunch of supporters, flags, colors on their face. Someone is cheering Ayushi, Ayushi. There are little kids here and there, waiting for her for their arrival.
Their new hero.
Their new hero. She was not a Bollywood celebrity, nor a full-fledged Indian men cricketer, nor a full-fledged women cricketer. She was in her just 17 or 18.
Under 19.
Under 19.
Budding days.
Budding days. When I saw the craze, the whole Madhya Pradesh cricket board and the people in and around waiting for her arrival, and she arrived like a lioness, single. This not just shows how cricket is unfolding. It is not just a male cricket or a female cricketer or a Bollywood star. There is something which is turning people around the cricket to take up the sports, to look up to the examples that Ayushi is setting up. I'm not really sure what's the story behind her or what the hard work she has put in to reach there, but I am pretty sure she has set hundreds and hundreds of examples in the Madhya Pradesh cricket board, and people will look up to her and take the sports. And she not only won a Asia Cup then, she went on to win under 19 T20 World Cup couple of months after that. This was one of the example I just wanted to speak about.
Thank you for sharing that anecdote with us, Sharon. When I was listening to you speak, the thing that sticks with me the most is the fact that that 50-year-old auntie had to ask Ayushi, is it safe? And are you treated fairly? Because even after winning a trophy for her country, Ayushi still has to answer that question. How are they treating you? Is it safe?
But look at the background where auntie comes from. What is for her to be a working woman in a society?
But that's exactly where we are right now, in the middle, between recognition and infrastructure, between celebration and support. The auntie wants to know a little bit more about whether she's being treated fairly, so she has a question about the infrastructure, whereas Ayushi probably expects more recognition. Ayushi wants to celebrate her victories, her tournaments, whereas the 50-year-old auntie probably wants to be there as a supporter, trying to understand her journey. And you too, Sharon, you saw the spotlight. You saw the dhols and the banners and the colors come out. But behind it, Ayushi must have gone through fatigue, injuries, contracts that barely last even a season. Because women cricketers, for the longest time, as we have said multiple times, have had to play a professional sport without professional systems. And that shows up in everything, from injuries that go untreated to training models that are built for male physiques. And as I had mentioned earlier, to players, female players juggling jobs and cricket at once. So while Ayushi might have walked out to flags and dhols and banners that day, a lot of women still walk into this game blindfolded. And that's, I think, where we disagree. You see the positives, you see the improvements in women's cricket a lot more, whereas I still see the same problems and patterns repeating themselves. However, one example that does come to mind that supports your argument that the game indeed is improving is the example of the ex-female Australian cricket captain, Shelley Nishke. She retired in 2011, having played 122 international matches for the Australians' female ODI side. And then she quietly disappeared. However, a professional system was put into place by Cricket Australia in 2017. A system that created a hierarchy to allow coaches to move from the city regional levels onto the national levels. And this strategy was built around creating gender-aware coaching pipelines. And that coaching pipeline eventually gave birth to a coach that had represented Australia 122 times. But apart from Australia, and apart from this success story, do you see such investments taking place? Even when I look at my own country, Pakistan, when Ramesh Raja was PCB chairman, he announced in 2022, in October of 2022, that there will be a females T20 league, similar to the Pakistan Super League. It will comprise of 4 teams, it will have 18 players per side, and there will be 6 foreign players. It never came to fruition. This league never came to light. And soon after this announcement, Ramesh Raja was removed from PCB chairmanship as Imran Khan lost his prime minister's position. And as you know, the PCB chairman in Pakistan is chosen by the prime minister. And so when the new prime minister came in, he brought in his own PCB chairman as well. And when that new PCB chairman came in, he didn't think that it would suit his legacy if he built on the ideas of his predecessor. And because of this political optics game, it was the women's game that suffered at the end of the day, as our women's cricketing side till date does not have a league platform to showcase their talents and abilities. Neither do they then get access to the financial riches that come with T20 leagues. You add to that Pakistani female cricketers as well as male cricketers are excluded from the Indian Premier League. You have a cricketing ecosystem in Pakistan that struggles to get high-profile exposure. This is a reality in my country. So how can I feel that women's cricket is indeed progressing?
So Hassan, when you were mentioning about mini PSL idea which launched by Ramesh Raja, I think he would have approached it in a way other leagues has approached it. When you look at the WPL, WPL was launched full-fledged in 2023. But before that, in 2017, they just soft launched a women's league. There were only 2 teams, namely Supernovas and Trailblazers. In 2019, they went on to add another team called Velocities. Now they conducted a tri-series for a couple of years. But in 2023, they launched WPL in full-fledged. The broadcasting rights of that particular league went for 951 crore INR. That is 116 million USD. The franchise rights went for $570 million, that is 4,670 crores INR in 2023. The WPL took a steep growth in Indian market, especially there are only 5 teams, but the viewership has risen. You have a multiple language commentary even for the WPL. The crowd has been pulled to the stadiums. There is an connectivity. I never felt that women's cricket is lagging behind the men's cricket. When you look at, particularly most of my friends watched WPL matches who never went on to watch an IPL cricket. Maybe the cost of the ticket or maybe the availability of the ticket. But in 2024, when I tried to go watch a WPL, the tickets were sold out. It was Chinnaswamy, the crowd of 34,000 capacity. The tickets were sold off. So there is a huge demand for women's cricket in recent days. WPL has grown into a huge setup now. Superstars from the past, superstars from the present and from the future are participate in a same league. There is an international exposure as well as a exposure for the younger generation who can look up and share a dressing room with international stars like Perry, Alyssa Healy, Nat Skewer Brunt, Mooney, Sufi Divine, Ismail Shabana, and many Indian superstars like Smriti Mandana, Jamaya Rodriguez. And these people get a mentorship from the superstars from tennis. Sania Mirza was a mentor of Royal Challengers Bangalore in one of the edition. Julian Goswami was a mentor for one of the women's Premier League's team. Women's cricket is growing at a pretty good pace and the viewership and the people are following passionately. I don't feel there is a difference between men's and women's cricket team. Maybe you can say me a bit biased, but I still don't agree with your argument saying there is a huge difference or there is a gender bias in this particular sport.
I must admit, Sharon, that there are certain things that you have said that make me believe, or are starting to make me believe, that the women's cricket game has almost come on par with the men's. I would like to give you some facts and figures, just a few, to further support some of the things you said. The 2023 Women's T20 World Cup in South Africa reached 192 million viewers globally. That's a 44% jump from the 2020 edition. The inaugural Women's Premier League that you were mentioning earlier, it pulled in 50 million unique viewers in India and clocked more than 1.4 billion total viewing minutes, which was more than the double of what the hundreds women's competition managed in the UK. Similarly, in the last edition of the Women's Big Bash League in 2023-2024 season, the TV and streaming audiences saw a 46% increase compared to the previous season. Live attendance rose by 23%, and the salary cap was increased by 22% from 2023. So yes, there are certain steps being taken in the right direction, and the game is growing. Sorry for being the devil's advocate, Sharon, but the examples you gave, the players you mentioned, yes, these players and these countries have had a weak infrastructure to develop their cricketing abilities. However, they at least have an infrastructure. Many of the other test-playing nations, apart from the big three, do not have a proper, full-fledged women's cricket infrastructure. When you give me examples of the IPL, when we discuss the 100, when we discuss the Big Bash, these are the richest boards. They do have the capacity to extend into the women's game. Do the other cricket boards have the same privilege? Sure, I understand your point of using IPL as a form of prototyping. And using it as a mechanism to learn what works and what doesn't work. But once again, the question comes back to that, are these other cricketing boards, apart from the big three, capable of investing into the cricketing infrastructure for women? And are they willing to? In this segment of What's Next, we're not just talking about where women's cricket is going. We're talking about how it gets there. Because as we had discussed earlier, the divide between men's and women's cricket isn't just practical, it's academic too. There is almost no deep research, no long-term data, no consistent media analysis that fully shows what's working, what's failing, and what lessons can be shared between countries. Right now, we're flying without a map. So for What's Next, we're breaking it down nation by nation. We look at how Australia, India, and England, the big three, are building their women's game, what's driving growth, what's not driving growth, and what the rest of the cricketing world, from South Africa to Thailand, can take from these models. And in this segment, the goal isn't to create a scoreboard between nations. It's to recognize that women's cricket won't bridge the gap just by adding fixtures or raising salaries. It also needs the same intellectual, structural, and data-driven attention that men's cricket has enjoyed now for decades. And that's exactly where we'll begin, with the nation that's arguably the furthest ahead, where the women's game isn't just an afterthought, but it's a fully built, commercially driven, standalone product. Australian women's cricket.
Thank you, Hassan. To be honest, Australian women's cricket is doing something that's very few sporting ecosystem in the world have figured out. They are not just participating, they are pioneering it. And you know what that opens up? One of the most exciting, most transformative stories in modern cricket. Because, Hassan, what Cricket Australia is doing with women's game, it's not about intimation. It's not about catching up for the sake of optics. It's about building something serious, sustainable, and sprinting with intent. Cricket Australia isn't trying to pit women's cricket against men's game. That's such a outdated way to frame it. Instead, they are laying down the infrastructure so women's cricket can catch up, not as a comparison, but as standalone commercial and cultural force. And Hassan, here is where it gets really interesting. They have got a strategy, not just vibes. It's called Women's and Girls Action Plan 2020-22 to 2032. It's a roadmap for next 10 years. Wanna hear it? What their big goal is? So let me break it down for you and our listeners. They want to grow women's cricket revenue around current 14 to 20 million dollar USD to 81 million per year by end of 2032. You know how much that is, Hassan? It's six-fold jump in just over a decade. It's pretty ambitious project. Now, stack that next to men's cricket. Right now, men's side bring about 235 to 270 million dollars annually, and they have projected across 400 million by 2032. But here is the real kicker. Women's cricket is growing nearly at triple the pace. So, no, it's not about closing the gap overnight, but it's about the momentum. And right now, they have got plenty of it. So Hassan, how do you think Cricket Australia is making all this happen? Let's break it down. Firstly, their pathways. Girls in remote towns, girls in big cities, they all have a structured entry points now. Be it a coaching, be it their academics, be the school tournaments and the staff that just didn't exist a decade ago. Now they have restructured it everywhere. Secondly, concentrate on the broadcasting. Every single women's BBL game is now either broadcast or streamed. That's not just visibility, it's a value creation. Fans follow teams, players build brands, sponsors see real airtime. It's a loop. It keeps feeding itself. Third is my favorite point, the Women's T20 World Cup 2020 edition, which happened in Australia, in MCG. Hassan, do you remember how many people showed up? Do you have any estimated number? Let me say, it's 86,174 in a single stadium. That's not symbolic. That's crazy for me. It forced everyone from broadcasters to the advertisers to critics to say, okay, this isn't niche anymore. Now let's speak about the commercial ecosystem which CA is building. Cricket Australia isn't just cashing in on hype. They are partnering with brands that actually believe in independent value of women's game. We are talking long-term sponsorship, merchandise strategies, outreach campaigns, all designed for young, diverse and inclusive audience that wants a new kind of cricket story. And Hassan, here is the strongest move of them all. They put their money where their mouth is. I repeat, they put their money where their mouth is. In 2023, they tripled the average WBBL salary, that is women's BBL salary. More and more domestic players are now full-time professionals. And that shift from part-time hustle to full-time focus, that's where talents became elite. As we mentioned earlier, most of the associate nations women cricketers are part-time cricketers and full-time into other professions. That's exactly Cricket Australia is concentrating and pulling the professional cricketers to play cricket professionally, not as a part-time hustle. So, this isn't about copying men's format. This is about helping women's game sprint on its own track with its own identity, its own voice, and its own commercial backbone. And that's why the 81 million target by 2032. It doesn't feel like a long shot. It feels like a finish line they are already sprinting towards and catching up pretty fast.
Thank you for that, Sharon. So yeah, with Australia, we know how the blueprint works. They've got the depth, the pathways, the culture, as well as the results to prove it. And to be fair, they've been the benchmark for so long that the question isn't whether they'll win, it's who can catch them, at least in my opinion. And Sharon, isn't your home team the one with the market, the energy, and the momentum to actually catch the Australian women's cricket team?
I think it's finally happening. Indian women's cricket, it's not just evolving, it's entering what I would call it as a breakout era. And this time, it's not just symbolic, it's structural, commercial, as well as cultural.
Mm-hmm.
Let's zoom out for a second. India is set to co-host 2025 ICC Women's ODI World Cup alongside Sri Lanka. I think you know.
Really? I thought it was in 2026.
No, it's 2025.
Mm.
That alone is a massive spotlight. But more than just hosting, India is building the scaffolding, a proper ecosystem for sustainable, high visibility women's cricket.
Mm.
And at the center of that, BCCI is not just giving us statements, not just ICC speeches. It is indulging WPL and its legacy in grassroots of every Indian state.
Oh, okay.
Hassan, you remember the first season of WPL 2023?
Vaguely.
For me, it was not just a tournament. It was a statement. Millions of viewers were watching. The stadiums like Mumbai and Navi Mumbai fully packed. And social media, they were absolutely buzzing, trending across the subcontinent. The Instagrams, the YouTubes, they played a best media game, I could say.
I'll confess that it was the media game that made me want to turn on my television and watch a little bit of the WPL.
That's exactly how I am saying.
For sure.
So, you remember the second season?
A little less than 2023.
It was even a smarter move.
Hmm.
They brought in a smarter broadcast, stronger squads, international player were retained.
What do you mean by a smarter broadcast?
It's like how you market a product, and as a you watching in women cricket, there is a certain setup how a cricket is watched.
Hmm.
For men's cricket, you have a long ads in between,
Yeah.
but since you have already stitched in your eyes with a screen, you went on to watch those 31-minute ad. But in terms of women cricket, they didn't just put up an ad. They gave an ad, not promoting any product. Here they were promoting the next match and what are the clashes. It was just pulling up people. It's not just about this match, but also what's happening in next match.
So would it be fair to assume that they were unable to fill those advertisement slots, so they started marketing the next games, or was this a conscious choice?
It was a conscious choice, I guess, because the audience which they are catering, most of the viewers were new to WPL because it hasn't been set up just a year ago. Now you have to retain the audience. Retention rate is one of the biggest factor when you speak in terms of digital marketing or a digital content, or if you are selling something.
Absolutely.
So to catch them and stick them and hold them to watch the match, cutting down the ad and putting advertisement which advertises a next match would be a great choice, I guess. That's how smart broadcasting is done for WPL.
All right, I've learned something new today.
What's even more exciting? The franchise owners whom also own IPL teams. It is not just a male's IPL team. Just for example, Delhi Capitals, Royal Challengers Bangalore, Mumbai Indians, they have their own men's team. But the way they advertise or they consider women's cricket is almost equal. When you speak about the content rate.
Do you feel like that as an RCB fan? And I want to ask you this question because was it the same even before the women's Royal Challenger Bangalore side won the WPL? Or did this attachment to the women's side increase after they won the title?
No. Since you asked this kind of question, let me just put up a numbers. 2024, when the WPL happens in legs. Basically, if you have a Delhi leg, then you have a Mumbai leg, then you have a Bangalore leg. So all the teams gonna go, and one stadium will host all their matches. Then they go to the next venue, they play all their matches. Then they come to the other venue, they play their all matches. So in the Bangalore leg, when Bangalore was not playing against any team, it was, I think, Mumbai versus Gujarat or Delhi versus Gujarat. Stadium was fully packed. It was not just a RCB brand that's speaking out. It's a women cricket that is speaking out. That's the loud marketing which BCCI pulled it off. Filling off a stadium with a capacity of 34,000 odd is not a joke. And it was a dream years ago. And let me remind you, those tickets are not free. People are paying certain penny or a dollars or money to come and attend those matches, and they are fully entertaining. And since we are heading in this direction, when RCB women's were playing in Bangalore, RCB women's have no good records in Chinnaswamy. It's no new story for an RCB. They played 4 matches last season. They lost 4 of them.
So do these parallels make you feel closer to this team? That, they're just like any other RCB team?
I'm exactly saying these two are equal for me. When RCB women's won, I was traveling to Goa. I guess I was on my travel day on my business trip. So The same day when we won, I was pretty happy. It was not just like, there is no difference for me as to whether it's a RCB women's or RCB men's team. I'm not saying it for optics, but for me it's the same. When they won, even I was so pretty happy. My team pulling off such a brilliant bowling spells in a final and demolishing Delhi Capitals in final. Capitals has even reached multiple finals. Man, McLennan was the captain, the Aussie captain. You know, these Aussie uh, players are a different gravy in finals.
Elite mindset.
Elite. But we also had an elite of elite.
Who?
Perry.
Elisa Perry.
Anyway, going back to the topic which we were discussing, BCCI have made it crystal clear. Women's cricket is no longer a hobby. There is a pay pretty in match fees for men and women who represents India. Central contracts are expanding, and for the first time, we are seeing a domestic women cricketers with access to the structured pathways, academics, and endorsements. Thing that felt impossible just few years ago, now they are standard. Then there is a big one which is coming up, which we just spoke about, the World Cup, which is starting from September 2. We are not just having an home advantage. For us, it's homecoming. Do you remember Eden Gardens 1997, when the year when we won?
Yes, sir. Somewhat.
So the stadium was fully packed. Neither of us has an access to watch it.
Yeah.
But when I heard of people speaking about it, it was happening in Eden Gardens, the World Cup final, Women's World Cup final, and it was fully packed.
Oh,
Eden
wow.
Garden.
Who was playing?
Australia was playing against New Zealand.
Okay.
Now imagine that amplified by digital fandom, WPL fan base, and finally, when I say finally, the mainstream media giving women's cricket front cover page which it deserved from years.
So what's really interesting is that the seeds for women's cricket have been planted in India a long time ago, ranging from them hosting the very first World Cup to selling out full stadiums in Eden Gardens in 1997, 28 and a half years ago.
As you mentioned about India hosting their own World Cups, even before a men's World Cup, India hosted women's World Cup. One last thing, Hassan. Let's look it with an honest viewpoint. India is still catching up to Australia and England in terms of trophies and legacies. But when it comes to market potential, audience size, and the commercial growth, no one is catching up faster than India. This isn't about copying men's model. This isn't about fighting for scraps. It's about women's cricket creating its own narrative on its own terms, on its own stars, and its own system. Women cricket isn't knocking the door anymore. It stepped into a room, and with WPL as an engine, 2025 World Cup as its stage, Hassan, it's ready to own the spotlight.
Sharon, while India's breakout era is being powered by the Women's Premier League and a home World Cup, there's another story worth telling, and also about how other nations are building their own paths. Some have treated the women's game as a true commercial and cultural priority, while some are still figuring out how to even start. But if there's one country that's treated the rise of women's cricket as both a sporting and commercial priority, it's England. And at the heart of it is the 100. From day one, they went bold. Men and women playing for the same franchises at the same venues on the same days with equal marketing weight. And it worked. 500,000 people attended the first season with 267,000 tickets specifically sold for women's games. The highest ever outside a World Cup. And this wasn't a sideshow. It was proof of concept. And it created stars. Sophia Dunkley, Alice Capsey, Nat Skyver-Brunt, names that now resonated beyond the cricket bubble. Furthermore, the ECB doubled the women's salary cap in 2023, Sharon, and committed to over 100 full-time domestic contracts. And furthermore, they've pushed hard into schools and urban communities, with girls' participation as a key metric. And this ties into the grassroots efforts that you were mentioning with Australia and England. And yes, Australia and India. And yes, the women's game still trails the men's commercially, but the 100 proved one thing: market it equally, and the fans will turn up. England just hasn't given women's cricket a seat, which is something we keep mentioning. They've made sure it eats at the same table. And talking about my home country, that's a lesson Pakistan could learn right now. Because while Pakistan's women have produced upsets, memorable moments, some breakout stars, the structure is still fragile. Domestically, there is no consistent women's league yet, which means that most players sharpen their skills abroad or in a short national camp. Stars like Nida Dar, Bisma Maroof, Alia Riaz have carried the flag, but there isn't enough investment in the next wave, in the upcoming generations especially. Alia Riaz, Bisma Maroof, who I just mentioned, on a lot of local TV shows, she mentioned the challenges of coming back to cricket post-pregnancy, institutional as well as cultural challenges. So those sorts of things also add to the complexities of being a women's cricketer in Pakistan. The PCB has also announced plans for a women's league multiple times, but delays, cancellations, bureaucratic BS have stalled momentum. And in a country where women's cricket faces both cultural and infrastructural hurdles, the takeaway is clear that without a permanent domestic league and visible, consistent marketing, the Pakistan's women cricket team potentially risks losing its talent pipeline that it obviously needs, right? And if the big three, Pakistan, New Zealand, etc., are still wrestling how to scale, the rest of the women's cricketing world, the associate nations, they have an even steeper climb ahead of them. One thing I would like to mention though is the South Africa's T20 World Cup in 2023. And you, Sharon, earlier had mentioned Eden Gardens in 1997. In 2023, there was a packed Newlands. And that was because there was a lot of heavy investment in domestic leagues. There was a lot of cricketing buzz. So when the international cricket did arrive, people were ready to receive it. Similarly, New Zealand keeps producing. They have the Super Smash League on TV. They have regional academies. And they have certain stars like Amelia Kerr who are leading in global super leagues. The West Indies too are rebounding through the women's CPL. A standout star would be Hayley Matthews. Bangladesh, under 19s, they reached their first T20 World Cup semis recently, which is now sparking school level growth. You want to go further and deeper into the weaker playing nations apart from the big three, you want to look at the associate nations. Thailand stunned the world in 2020 with their performances at the T20 World Cup. The Irish female cricketers are fully contracted. UAE, Scotland, Indonesia, they're all building youth leagues and they're going on ICC-backed tours. Brazil's women have more than, I think, 100 domestic players registered. The game's picking up there as well. So in some countries, such as like, for example, Brazil, women's cricket is even growing faster than the men's because there's less baggage and more freedom to write the story, right? They're not being held to the men's standard. They're allowed to define what women's cricket is. So in this entire segment, when we talk about what's next, the answer isn't just in the big three. We could learn from the big three, especially the women's cricket side, but it's the depth. It's the girls from Karachi to Cape Town to Bangkok to Bridgetown in Barbados who need to be able to see cricket as a real future, not just a dream or something they get to follow along on TV.
But Hassan, you are speaking about so much depth of women's cricket, the content of cricket. When will women start playing test cricket regularly? Or else this game will remain as a gentleman's game forever.
Absolutely. It is nothing short of a tragedy that women don't get to play test cricket. You talk about letting them pioneer the sport, give them the freedom to define the sport as per their values and their beliefs, give them the autonomy to take control over the sport, yet you completely exclude them from one of the formats. They're playing ODIs barely, but they're playing T20s regularly. But Test cricket, nowhere to be seen. And here's a shocking fact. In the last 10 years, so 2015 to 2025, women have only played tests 14 times. So 14 test series in the last 10 years.
Really?
Yeah. And if you want to further break this down, in these 14 test series, England have played 9 tests. Australia, 8. South Africa, 4. India, 3. This
I'm
is
not surprised.
this is all you have to show for test cricket in the last 10 years. 4 nations, 14 tests, and all of these 4 nations have played single digits worth of tests. They haven't even played double figure amounts.
Are they just playing for the namesake of having a tag of test playing cricket?
I guess. And if you're only playing 14 test series in the last 10 years, it's quite obvious that you're not really trying to promote the sport.
It's boiled down to barely 1 to 2 series a year.
Pretty much. That's the average. And why are we only trying to boost women's cricket in the T20 format? What's wrong with the test format? That's where cricket is in its purest form. That's the greatest test of their skills, of any athlete's skills.
Is it because of the audience engagement? Because since we are trying to build a T20, then we can go format by format. Let's have a solid followers of the game. Let them start enjoying the one format, because of which they can transfer this set of audience to next set of format. Maybe
Yeah,
a
but
ODI or test.
okay, but then why has men's test cricket died and the T20 for men's has skyrocketed? भाई जब इनसे ICC से men's cricket test नहीं संभाली जा रही तो ये women's cricket test क्या संभालेंगे?
Is it because of the audience engagement? Do you remember we were speaking how a generation has shifted from YouTube videos to YouTube shorts or the reels? We are looking for a kind of short-term dopamine. Like we want to invest less time and have a maximum joy. Is it where the cricketing format also trying to fit in?
See, this is a separate discussion altogether about the future of cricket, right? Where do we see it going? Yes, there have been discussions about shortening the 50-over game to 40 overs. There's been some discussions and murmurs about shortening the test game to 4 days because so many tests aren't lasting 5 days. T20, as short as it is, has also had spin-off versions such as the 100 or the T20 in Abu Dhabi. But if we go back to the drawing board and we look at what defines cricket at its core, it's T20,
For me,
ODI, and the ultimate test, cricket.
it's test cricket for me, and it was not just for me.
So that's my point. That's my point, that you aren't ICC, the cricket boards, the big three also, I'm so sorry to say. They're all responsible for ruining men's cricket and making it all about T20 cricket. So it's not surprised that these same people are following the same textbook or the same formula for women's cricket too. They just they go where the money takes them. It's a capitalist society. It's a capitalist cricketing structure. That's what the big three have done. We make the most money, so we have the most power. Right? So this is a structural issue, right? When you need to start redefining your values of cricket. And that's not only for men's but also women's. But unfortunately or fortunately, we have to see those changes made in the men's cricket domain for the women to follow suit, because that's been the pattern so far. But what I'm saying, or what I'm hoping to see, is that someone breaks this pattern and says, no, women want to play test cricket regardless of whether men continue to play it or not.
Yeah, I think we can use the technique which we call a prototyping in manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
Since we started losing hopes on test cricket in men's as well, then WTC cycles pitched in. That was the whole intention, is to promote test cricket and let all play regularly and let have a fan engagement. When we have an end goal of winning the WTC cycle, you have a championship, you have a trophy to win. That will pull teams with a higher energy and a higher passion to achieve some goal. And it also allows the followers not only follow their own respective test playing nations, but also the other nations. So
Mm.
since
See how
the
they're
table
doing.
has been
Yeah.
dynamic, you don't know who's gonna play you in a finals. So same way, can they prototype this men's WTC cycle into women's? So can they have this idea and start pitching it to the women's test cricket as well, with a minimum number
But
of
then if you
test
have
playing
a
nations and
but
a minimum number of matches?
but Sharon, again, I say this with great care. I don't want to offend anyone, but the gulf of class between the women's cricket in Australia, England, and India, and then the rest of the cricketing playing nations is huge. Even if you have that World Test Championship cycle for women, you might not have a lot of competition. And we see that in the World Cups.
So
Australia, England, they rest their key players when they're playing even Pakistan, who I would like to see them take more seriously, but they know how good they are and they don't need their best 11 to beat Pakistan.
so how are we plugging this void? Neither of us have an answer for this.
Let us know in the comments if you think there is a solution to this issue. But that marks the end of our episode on women's cricket. This is Cricktake. My name is Hassan Ali. I was joined by Sharon Kumar and behind the scenes, like always, Rupesh Atmuri. We'll speak to you some other time, some other place. Take care and bye-bye.